Today's episode is brought to you by the GG button. Head over to our site 1pvs2p.com, click the GG button at the top of our home screen, and save 10% off your order at ggbutton.com. Or use the coupon code GGWIN at checkout. Hit that GG button to call out a good game or to troll your friends. Again, head over to 1pvs2p.com, click the GG button at the top, and use coupon code GGWIN at checkout to save 10%.
Thanks to our friends at the GG button for supporting our podcast, and thanks to you, the listener, for supporting us.
A new Baldur's Gate NPC stirs up internet hate. Dark Souls 3 prepares us to die. Game Boy Color's Pokemon trading card game turns 16 this week. All that plus more today, Wednesday, April 13th, 2016. You're listening to the 1P versus 2P podcast. I'm Taylor Ray. With me, as always, is my brother and co-host, Ryan Ray. Let's begin with
First Attack.
We've got our top stories from the gaming world from this past week. Let's begin with more shipping woes, continuing with the HTC Vive. Man, this VR debut has not been going smoothly. We've talked about the Oculus Rift stuff in the past. Ryan, tell me what's going on with the Vive now.
It sounds like a lot of people are pre-ordering this headset and not getting clear communication about when their headsets are actually arriving, getting confirmation dates as far as 2 months away to an unclear shipping date. Prominent people such as Kotaku's Patrick Klepek have said that basically that this is a rocky launch for both headsets. Some people really, really want these things and they're just not getting them.
It's really, really poor communication, and they're really bungling this launch. When people are paying, like, what is it, $800 for this Vive, they're pre-ordering it, I feel like there's a certain level of expectation, right? Even though it's a new technology, this is a major manufacturer we're talking about, both on HTC and Valve's end, quite frankly. They need to be doing a much better job of communicating with their customers. Fortunately, I haven't pre-ordered either this or the Oculus, so I'm looking at this and saying those people who have been waiting around and they don't understand when they're getting their stuff is really shocking to me. I know there have been reports saying, oh, it's going to ship sometime within this window. They're doing a first come, first serve, which is pretty typical, right? But they're not meeting the demand. And when you give like vague statements like it's coming April 2016, here we are mid-April. Like, they need to give a little bit better communication, and these half-baked apologies that we're seeing, just really not enough. It's so disappointing, and it's unfortunately not just limited to the Vive, it's with the Rift as well. I cannot believe these kinds of things are happening.
On behalf of the Oculus, they actually released a statement this past week addressing their shipping woes. They're blaming their problems with component shortages. And let me just read you the quote here. The component shortage impacted our quantities more than we expected, and we've updated the shipment window to reflect these changes. We apologize for the delay. I think in Valve's case, Valve has a history of sitting back and letting the market kind of dictate what happens. This happened with their paid mods thing. It happened with Steam Greenlight. Valve has a very hands-off approach to the way they handle their products. And I think in this case, it really bit them in the butt. These headsets need to really be golden from the get-go. And people pre-ordering an $800 thing, in the case of the Oculus, a $600 thing, and not receiving it, or even getting clear communication about when it's coming. I mean, come on. We have trackers for Amazon. Anything you order online comes within the next day or two. And if it doesn't, you get a clear email saying when it will indeed come. And usually you get some kind of credit if you complain. And it seems like these companies need to do a make good for these customers who are paying so much money for these really, really cool headsets that they just aren't receiving quite yet.
Well, so far, I think Oculus has gone so far as to refund shipping costs for those people that have pre-ordered it. But is it so much to ask for like accurate, informative details about your order? Like, it just seems insane to me, right? Like, I know a lot of orders are shipping in April. We're not done with April, but like, come on. I would be so upset if I pre-ordered this stuff and I did not know when to expect this stuff. It just seems like neither company is really prepared for the big leagues. With the debut of this new technology, these things need to be impressive, need to get in consumers' hands. And when you have media outlets who are publicizing all these launch titles and no one is able to play them, it's really, really, really sad. And it's going to get people so frustrated and disinterested from the get-go. And it's really, really unfortunate that it's gone this way so far. I cannot think of another console launch in recent memory, maybe the Xbox One, that was bungled so quickly, so close to the release date.
Well, speaking of getting these headsets in people's hands, in other VR news, up to 30 Microsoft stores will get Vive demo units this year, and approximately 10 GameStop stores across the country are also getting them this month. The hardware is going to demonstrate select games from the 120 VR titles that are currently available on Steam. Oculus has not said whether they are doing any booths or setups for retail presence, but at least the Vive is going to be out there in a few select locations, likely Microsoft flagship stores and malls. There's more information on their website if you're interested in checking this stuff out. But yeah, the early word on both of these headsets seems to be either find them in retail locations or know a guy who has them to check it out, because at these price points, $600, $800, this isn't just like a try it once and see if it works. This is a very expensive investment, and consumers really need to know if they're all in on VR before they go ahead and pre-order this thing that may never come.
These demo units in retail stores are an excellent idea and the perfect way to market these things, because just talking about VR doesn't do it justice. You have to experience this thing for yourself. I can tell you firsthand, I remember playing a demo with an Oculus DK2 back in the day, a couple of years ago, and it's very impressive. It really is. This is technology you have to experience in person. And so they have like a retail presence, and it's not going to mean anything if people can't buy these things. That's my point. All right, let's move on. Let's get away from that story. Let's move on to what I teased up at the top. Baldur's Gate, they got a new expansion. It's been a long time since the original came out. It's a new DLC called Siege of Dragonspear, and there's a lot of controversy swirling about one specific NPC, a character that's named, let's see here, I've got it here, Mizena, Mizhena, admits through dialogue that she is a transgender character. Now we're seeing a lot of negative reviews and a lot of vitriolic attacks being directed at the developer Beamdog, who put out this new expansion. So Ryan, what specifically about this character is just causing up so much internet hate out there right now?
It seems like a lot of people who are angry about this are angry that a political agenda or a transgender character is in this fantasy world in the first place, which I think is really a short-sighted view of things. Fantasy worlds tend to have a lot of dragons and elves and orcs and all these things that don't really exist. But in the case of a transgender character, those are real people that exist in our society, and they've been very marginalized. Increasingly, we're seeing a lot of people questioning their genders, questioning their identities. And these people exist, they're out there, and it makes sense that a video game writer and developer would be interested in including that kind of character for, a genre of game that supposedly would be very open to this. But there's just been a huge backlash against the developer and the character for even being a part of Baldur's Gate, which is a fantasy world that's existed for at least 20 years.
Well, there's specifically one writer for Baldur's Gate that's being targeted by this movement, all these hate movements. Like, it's really sad. Her name is Amber Scott, and she's admitted that she doesn't like the stereotypical character we see in a lot of fantasy games. It's that trope of like a straight male. And she's gone so far as to say, well, she's made statements like on Twitter and on forum posts elsewhere that she is in favor of a lot of social justice movements, and to include these in video games is a positive thing. And I totally agree with that. And you alluded to that as well, Ryan. And let me just say that there is just really, really sad feedback that's being posted on Steam and elsewhere, on their forums, on Twitter. And I just want to say, like, reviewing a game is one thing. Judge it based on its merits. Like, a community should not be hating on a game because they disagree with some sort of social statement that's going on. Is the game fun? Okay, great. Give it a positive review. Is it buggy and needs to be updated, needs to be patched? Fine, give it a mixed or negative review. I understand that. Unfortunately, what's sort of snowballed this issue and made this more of a controversy than what it needed to be is that this expansion, Siege of Dragonspear, is bug-ridden, unfortunately, and some multiplayer aspects aren't working. Some people can't get it to run well. And unfortunately, it's really galvanized a lot of these negative people on the internet, like reviewing this game and totally lambasting it all over the place. It's really, really unfortunate. And unfortunately, this is the second week in a row where we're talking about someone, a woman specifically in the industry, that's getting attacked online.
For their part, Beamdog has actually stood up to the plate and defended their writer with a public statement, talked about the character in question, and said, in retrospect, it would have been better served if we had introduced a transgender character with more development. Some people cried out that the NPC wasn't fully fleshed out, which is, a valid criticism. But
right, that kind of thing is fair criticism. But just the fact that she's transgendered is not enough. Explain why she's one-sided or not an interesting character to put in the game. It's just really, really unfortunate.
This is an example of a game company stepping forward and standing tall for one of its employees, saying that they won't be swayed by this kind of behavior. They're going to continue to have inclusionary characters and these kinds of themes in their games. I'm very proud of Beamdog for supporting their employees and for including a character like this. It's an NPC. It's somebody you can miss. You don't even have to talk to their character if you don't like her that much. Honestly, I think these kinds of characters and these kinds of messages belong in games. We've seen an increase in the number of games in the past few years with these kinds of messages. Let's think of Papers, Please, and that talked a lot about immigration. Cart Life, that talked a lot about working class society, that kind of thing. I don't want games to be this apolitical art that really just exists for our entertainment. If it wants to be something more as a medium, it should have political statements. It should have characters that question what is normal, and it should also have characters that are inclusionary of all races, all genders, all sexes, all walks of life. Because frankly, those are the kinds of people who play games. People who play games aren't exclusively white, male, heterosexuals. They include people of all different kinds of stripes. And I really applaud Beamdog for defending Amber Scott.
And unfortunately, we have to report on this because time and time again, these online harassers are really reactionary and they're so vocal and they are able to just downvote developers on Reddit, for example, and totally spam their forums and even goes so far as to harass them in their personal lives. And that's what's having the most impact here. And it's just, again, super, super, super sad. And I don't feel like anyone wins when the conversation spins this way. And yeah, it's really, really unfair. Okay, that's it for our stories. Let's go to a little bit of housekeeping for our podcast. So Ryan and I have decided that we want to make this show a little more interactive. We hear from you on Facebook and Twitter sometimes, even on our blog posts on our website, but we really want to play your voices. We want to read your comments here on the show. And we really welcome any of your questions, your feedback, your comments, your suggestions, anything you want us to discuss on the show. We'd like you to sound off and let us know. And here's how you do it. If you go to our site, 1pvs2p.com, and you click on the Contact Us link up at the top of the page, and there's even an announcement bar up there. You can't miss it. It's want to be on our show? Click here, okay? And anyway, it takes you to this page where you have a form here. So you can put your name, your email address, and a message and submit it to us. And if we like it well enough, then we'll read it on air. We'll put it on our next show, and it'll be fantastic. And I just want to say this email address that we're asking for on this form is just to stop spammers. We're not going to sell your information, neither your name, not your email address, not any of your message. We're very protective of your rights, so don't worry about that. But there are a lot of other ways you can contact us. You can leave us a voicemail. There's a link on the site if you're accessing it on mobile. You can even text us. You can email us, podcast@1pvs2p.com. You can message our Facebook page, tweet at us, or even record a message on Skype. Ryan, what are you looking for when people are contacting us, are submitting stuff for our show?
Well, Taylor, I think our show is very interesting just as the two of us, but what I'm looking for feedback, potential show topics that we've already covered, maybe an angle that you and I missed, maybe some detail, maybe some fact that we failed to mention. We'd really like to hear your feedback, and we really like to make this more than just a two-way conversation. We want to include voices that aren't just me and you. So please hit us up at any of those links, and we look forward to reading some of your comments live on air.
Right. Again, just go to our site, 1pvs2p.com. All the links are there. Again, you can voicemail us, text us, email us, message us on Facebook, tweet at us, record a message on Skype, or just fill out the form that's right there. So, and thanks in advance if you'll do this going forward. We really appreciate it, and we'd love to hear from you. We'll look forward to it.
All right, let's move on to the games that came out this week.
I love new releases.
Starting off, we have Dark Souls 3 for Xbox One, PS4, and PC. Ryan, you're a huge fan of the series so far. What's new about this game?
So this game has a lot of similar elements of the previous games while adding a few new things. There's a new FP meter for special attacks. You can, some weapons will have, you can add like attack buffs, or it'll be like a stance change and allow you to do a whole different moveset. They're also changing how kindling works. And reviewers seem to be saying that this Dark Souls 3 is kind of a like greatest hits album of Dark Souls. It's going to have returning characters, but also a little differences in the combat and in the way the world is structured. It has kind of the fast travel system of Dark Souls 2. Of Dark Souls 2, while maintaining the kind of crisp combat and very tense boss battles that Dark Souls 1 was really known for. This appears to be the last in this fantasy action RPG saga. They've hinted as much. This is kind of the third Souls game in 3 years. There have been 5 Souls games total if you count Bloodborne. Very, very cool franchise. I wouldn't classify it as difficult. I know that this franchise has a reputation of being very, very difficult, but I think this game, it comes kind of out of a mold of when games didn't really have to explain themselves to players, and it's kind of gained a lot of popularity and notoriety for it. I will say that the console version seemed to be locked this time at a steady 30 frames per second. It seems like the PC version, it may be the way to go. It's a consistent 60 frames a second, very smooth, but many players are reporting a bug both on console and PC where the game crashes when you get to the first bonfire, or if you're not playing the night class. I'm sure Bandai Namco will eventually address this in a forthcoming patch. They're very good about patching the Dark Souls games, and they're very, very popular.
Ryan, did you pre-order the game, or are you going to buy it soon?
I did pre-order it. I have it on. I have the PC version. I'm very looking forward to checking it out. I just recently beat the first Dark Souls and really, really enjoyed my time with it. I eventually will get to all these Souls games, and I look forward to playing Dark Souls 3. It seems to be the next latest greatest in that franchise. Okay,
well, you said before we started recording, do not name this episode Praise the Sun. Literally anything but that. So you got any suggestions then?
Something different. Maybe Get Good or Go Home.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's move on to another new release, Warbits for iOS. We've talked about this game before, previewed it during our PAX South 2016 episode, so go back and listen to it if you want to hear more about this. This is a turn-based strategy game, a tactical game that I'm very excited about. We may be reviewing the game when it comes out later this week, and it's heavily, heavily inspired by Advance Wars, which is the main appeal for me, and I hope for a lot of other people. Like a mobile experience, I hope it turns out, because a mobile Advance Wars seems like one of my dream games, right?
I spent a lot of time with the previous Advance Wars games. I've played through them multiple times, tried to unlock everything, tried to get the best grades, and those games were really fun. They were back on the Game Boy Advance and on the DS. I'm happy to see that another developer is taking the Advance Wars mantle and trying to do something new with it, and I hope this game is good. We're going to try to give impressions of this game once we get review copies, and I'll try to give impressions on a future show.
Right, and maybe even a Let's Play video or a gameplay video I'll post out there on our YouTube channel. So be on the lookout for that. Very excited to check that game out. And we have another handheld game, not on mobile, but it's for 3DS, Bravely Second End Layer. Ryan, you played through Bravely Default a lot. What is this one? What makes it different from the previous one?
So Bravely Default, if you didn't play it, is kind of a Final Fantasy-inspired turn-based combat RPG. The first game had this brave default system where basically you could kind of take an extra turn ahead of the enemy turn. You could also stock up the turns so that you could pile up turns after turns after turns to try to get an advantage in combat. The sequel, Bravely Second, is trying to expand on this system, adding more jobs to the job system that the original game had. The original game had 24 jobs or something like that. This game has just over 30 jobs. And they released a demo on the eShop. You can check it out now. And if you play through the demo, you're going to unlock extra content in the main game, which is coming out this week. I will say the story of the first game gets very convoluted in its second act. I won't spoil it, but let's just say it involves multiple universes. Bravely Second seems to be not going in that direction, which I think is a positive. The demo is really, really cool. Has some interesting Street Pass functionality. And if you like Final Fantasy style RPGs, I'd highly recommend you check it out.
That's it for this week's new game releases. Let's move on to new games that were announced.
Here comes a new challenger!
So we heard about this new sequel to the hidden gem, this sort of a cult game, Hand of Fate, that came out of nowhere last year. It's getting a sequel early next year.
Right, this was shown off behind closed doors at GDC, and it seems like the good ideas of the last game are going to be kind of fleshed out. If you remember, Taylor, this is kind of a hybrid card game / action RPG. Basically, you get kind of dealt a deck of cards, and you kind of role play and move along the dungeon with the cards. And then some of the cards will push you into real-time action sequences, which was probably the part of the game that was very weak. It was kind of this Batman Assassin's Creed style combat, but it didn't work as well. The game was kind of chunky, had some technical issues, but a very, very neat idea. And it seems like they're going to try to flesh that out in this sequel. And one of the ideas that the game's director, Morgan Jaffett, has described for the sequel has said that he's going to try to tie different possible outcomes of these battles to different branches of a mission. So, for example, if you're asked to defend townspeople in a scenario on one of the cards, you might get a different outcome depending on how many of those townspeople you actually save. So it seems like they're going to try to deliver on the promise of the original game's premise. The original was released on Games with Gold. It did really well. It sold about 400,000 copies on PC and a little over 1 million with the Games with Gold promotion. So I hope this game does really well. It's a really, really neat concept.
Very cool. I'm excited to check it out eventually. Let's talk about a game that a lot of people have been expecting for a while. It was teased at last year's E3. Gears of War 4 now has an official release date, so technically it's not a new game announcement. We're more just talking about the update. It's October 11th this year. There's a multiplayer beta that's starting April 18th, though, so that's very, very, very soon. So they're adding a lot of new characters to the mix, and personally, I hope it is better than the last game, because Judgment was not so good.
Right, this was covered in Game Informer's cover story. The story takes place about 25 years after Gears of War 3, which is the last game in that story's timeline, and promises to add a lot of new weapons and enemies into the mix. You're going to be playing as Marcus Phoenix's son, JD, and two new heroes that are new to the Gears of War universe. You know, I really like the Gears of War games. I think they're really fun third-person cover shooters. It was probably one of the original reasons you might have checked out the Xbox 360. But as the games kind of wore on, their sheen was kind of taken off. They had a lot of neat ideas, particularly the chainsaw kills, horde mode, which was kind of the start of all that. Those modes in that generation of games. So hopefully the multiplayer isn't just Shotgun City. Gears of War multiplayer is known for having a lot of people playing shotguns and being very, very laggy. So hopefully they smooth that out with the beta coming up.
Yeah, definitely. And on top of that, this game should be smoother, hopefully, because this time it's running off of Unreal Engine 4, so something to look forward to. It might feel and look a little bit different from the past ones of the franchise, and hopefully they will have not botched what they did last time with Gears of War Ultimate Edition on Xbox One, because we talked about it on the show. Man, that was a bad step in that franchise. So look forward to that coming out October 11th later this year. Let's move on back to new game announcements. Attack on Titan: Wings of Freedom will be coming to the West here on August 28th. This is a Koei Tecmo game that will land on Xbox One. Steam, and last gen and current gen PS platforms, so PS3 and PS4. So looks pretty neat. I mean, like, expect the sort of hybrid of Metal Gear Rising meets Ninja Gaiden, like this action game. Like, I don't know anything about this anime, but like the actual premise of this gameplay seems like a lot of fun to me, honestly.
Right, the trailer showed characters kind of shooting grappling hooks into these big Godzilla-sized titans, and you climb up them to probably try to take them down or be their friend or something. I don't know. But
it's going to borrow a lot of those Japanese tropes of like, find the weak point, right? And then attack it like nonstop, right? It's like giant crab battles, but instead we're talking about like these naked, muscly titans, right? That's what the footage looked like, at least in the video, right?
yeah. All right, let's talk about a game that's long rumored, but it's finally getting its first teaser trailer. Titanfall 2 is coming out. Developer Respawn Entertainment is promising more information on Titanfall 2, but they have released a trailer that doesn't reveal much, but it does sound like there is going to be a single-player campaign, unlike the first Titanfall. And interestingly, this game is going to be coming out on PS4 as well as Xbox One and PC. If you remember, Taylor, the original game was an Xbox exclusive and a PC game.
Right, yeah, and Microsoft really heavily marketed that series, and it kind of fell flat, to be honest. The online community just like quickly left for the next Call of Duty. I don't think it didn't take the world by storm, unfortunately. Like, and they did a ton of marketing for that. And remember that like crazy collector's edition, like that huge Titan? Yeah, so I don't know. Well, I guess we're going to hear about more information about Titanfall 2 during E3 when EA talks about it. So that's June 12th. We'll hear more about maybe potentially like a release date. So we'll see.
If From Software isn't going to develop another Armored Core game, I really would like to see somebody deliver on the multiplayer mech combat that Armored Core was really all about, and that the first Titanfall was really all about. So hopefully Titanfall 2 delivers on that promise.
Right, like that was a cool feature for the multiplayer for sure. Like definitely a brand new twist on the shooter genre. Like I really love that aspect of it. But the progression, like it didn't give you much incentive to play for long. Like the unlockables took way too long to unlock, and the perks just weren't very valuable. So it really was just based on pure skill. Like how well could you wall run? How quickly can you get your Titan? And then just start dominating the matches. So like it just kind of seemed like one note, and then like it was very repetitive. Like I think Call of Duty has like a much better experience and with more incentives to keep you playing the game for a lot longer online. All right, last but not least, we have Severed, which is launching on PS Vita April 26th. That's right, folks. The Vita is not dead quite yet. This is an actual game that's not just a Japanese port of some JRPG. This is a game from developers of Guacamelee. What a great game. They're Drinkbox Studios. And originally this game was scheduled to be released last summer, but it was pushed back to now. We have like this official release date. So April 26th.
Right, this game looks kind of like, from the trailer, it looks a lot like Fruit Ninja meets Guacamelee meets Infinity Blade, with sword slashes happening with the Vita's touchscreen. And I look at the trailer of this game and think to myself, why isn't this a phone game? The Vita touchscreen isn't the most responsive touchscreen in all of mobile gaming. And it seems like this game is destined to be ported to iOS and Android.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if it's ported over to PC as well. Like we know Guacamelee like got a ton of ports after it was originally released. Like it even came out on Nintendo consoles as well. So wouldn't be surprised if they do that as well. Like depending on how successful the launch is. This week in gaming history. This week in gaming history, Pokemon trading card game for the Game Boy Color was released on April 10th, 2000, the new millennium. So that's now 16 years old. This is a game that is very close to my heart. It's my favorite Pokemon offshoot game. It really is. Like it beats out Pokemon Stadium and like Pokemon Snap for me. I have such fond memories for this game. This was an adaptation of the very popular tabletop trading card game back in the late 90s and early to mid 2000s. And it's still alive right now, has a great community. And this was one of those early Game Boy games that feature trading card games, if you recall. It was developed by Hudson Soft and published by Nintendo.
Right. So in this game, you basically control a Pokemon trainer, and you travel around the game world, challenging rival card trainers, challenging them to card battles. You use 60 card decks just like you do in the trading card game. There are 8 kind of clubs, Pokemon gyms, if you will, each with different decks representing the game's elemental card types. Which I'm struggling to remember. Fighting, Psychic, Electric, Water, Grass, Fire, and Normal. Well, that was pretty good.
Yeah, yep. It was colorless, in the Pokemon trading card game, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, normal type.
But basically, it follows the same structure of the normal Pokemon games. You kind of challenge the 8 gym leaders, and then you go on to the Elite Four. You face 4 Grandmasters, and then you try to unlock the 4 legendary cards, which are the 3 legendary birds and Mewtwo. And it was a really a neat card game. Again, like you said, you didn't really see a lot of this. You saw a lot of like Mahjong and a lot of like backgammon type games. And this was kind of the first mainstream attempt to really try to get fans of Pokemon and fans of the Pokemon trading card game kind of together into a video game. Really impressive thing. A total of 226 cards in the game itself, which kind of represented the first 3 sets of the real life game, as well as some game cards that weren't available outside of the game because of gameplay mechanics or because they were just really weird.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really set the standard for future Pokemon trading card games to come out. Like now we have an iPad version with modern cards, and it's this free-to-play app. And now Nintendo is also bringing that over to Android. There's an open beta for it right now. So here we are in 2016, and this game is still around, very popular. Not as popular as, I would say, Magic the Gathering, but still, for kids, this is like a perfect introduction, not only to the Pokemon brand, but to trading card games in general. And I have to admit, it's really kept my interest even after this game came out in 2000. So the Pokemon cards, like, it was popular because if you remember the zeitgeist from the original games in Red and Blue, like, it featured all the Pokemon you would recognize from Gen 1. And as you defeated your opponents, these club masters that we talked about before, you were awarded with more and more booster packs, and you always got like random new cards that you could build multiple decks around, and you also had to customize certain decks so that you could fight against some of the strengths of your opponents in the game, just like in real life. So it was kind of this ingenious move, I think, by Nintendo to keep that fresh, to keep the trading card game popular, was to make this video game adaptation. Like you said, there's also exclusive cards in here, and we'll talk about one of them. The game features a cameo from this Japanese comedian. It was very strange. His name was Imakuni, and he was a guy you could actually battle against. He was this very bizarre guy dressed in this like a black furry suit with ears, kind of looked like a bear. He had a great theme. And also the president and CEO of the Pokemon Company at the time was, and I'm struggling to pronounce this, Tsunekazu Ishihara. So cool to see that in this game versus in real life. It was also a very successful game sales-wise. It sold more than 600,000 copies in Japan by 1999, becoming the 20th most bought console game of that year in that region, which is pretty impressive back in the day for a Game Boy Color title, right?
Right, and in the States, it sold about 1.5 million copies during its first year. And I would say it sold more. That Nintendo has since put out a 3DS Virtual Console version, still very excellent. I think it was kind of the proto free-to-play game with the kind of card packs and the random cards that you would get in those packs. And it just had a really cool like deck customization thing. And you and I are huge fans of card games, particularly video games that feature card games. And I think the long tail of this game is very impressive. It has had a very impressive legacy, both on Pokemon and on trading card games in general. So happy birthday to the Pokemon trading card game, now 16 years old.
Happy birthday indeed. Ryan, let's go to the bonus stage. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's been 3 3 years since we've heard David Hayter play Solid Snake in Metal Gear, but in an official Ford YouTube video, that's right, Ford the car maker, Hayter voices an ad for a new car. Let's listen.
Colonel, long time no see.
Snake, today's briefing is of the utmost importance.
What is it, Colonel?
I'll be telling you all about the Ford Focus SE.
That's more interesting dialogue than anything Kiefer Sutherland said in the last Metal Gear game. A custom firearms manufacturer in Texas modded up a Glock handgun to resemble a Nintendo Zapper, a light gun that shipped with millions of NESs in the 1980s. Parents and gun enthusiasts alike are up in arms over the custom gun, saying it too closely resembles the Nintendo accessory.
I imagine Nintendo is thrilled about this news. Can gun makers get takedown notices?
There's a cheat code that enables an Easter egg on Tesla vehicles' autopilot map that is Mario Kart themed. According to Elon Musk, owners of Tesla vehicles equipped with autopilot simply need to engage the semi-autonomous driving system 4 times in quick succession to unlock a Rainbow Road-style roadmap.
That's the best cheat code I've ever heard. Like, now we're talking about real-life cheat codes and real-life cars. That's awesome. California Congressman Duncan Hunter is being questioned by the Federal Election Commission after it was discovered his credit card used, quote, campaign funds to pay for video games on 68 separate occasions, end quote. His campaign credit card spent more than $1,300 on Steam games last year, noting that they were, quote, a personal expense that had to be, quote, paid back, and he hasn't done it yet.
Come on, man, at least wait for a Steam sale. All right, Taylor, the rest of the segment is vaping video game puns. The only one I could come up with was Vaptress.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. This dude also vapes? I didn't know that. This guy is a man of the people. All right, that's it. If you liked our show, please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes and Stitcher. It just takes 5 minutes. Please let us know what you think of our show.
All of our episodes can also be heard on our site, which we said is 1pvs2p.com. You can subscribe to this show by searching with your favorite podcast app or by using our site's RSS feed. All of our sources for this week's stories have been posted at the link in the show notes.
Like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at 1pvs2p_podcast. As always, we want to thank Phonetic Hero for the use of his songs for our show, Coffee Stomp, and Super Manly Brothers X. Both of those are part of the compilation project Chiptunes Equals Win.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.